In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the especially merciful. What happens when an army that appears unstoppable marches toward a sanctuary defended by no comparable army? In the late 6th century, Arabia stood between competing powers, trade routes, and religious ambitions. To the south, Yemen connected the peninsula with the Red Sea world and the Horn of Africa. Political control there had changed hands, and Aksumite influence from across the sea had become important. Within this setting, later, Seerah reports connect an Aksumite governor, commonly known as Abraha, with a campaign directed toward Makkah. These reports describe an attempt to challenge the standing of the Kaaba and redirect Arabian pilgrimage. The Qur'an itself does not name the commander or explain every political detail. It identifies the attackers by an unforgettable description: the people of the elephant. That distinction matters. The Qur'anic account is certain for Muslims. Many additional details belong to historical reports that should be presented with care. Whatever the precise route and motive, Arabia remembered a formidable force advancing from the south toward the sacred house. An elephant represented unusual and intimidating power. Soldiers, equipment, animals, and provisions required planning across difficult terrain. From a human perspective, the direction of events appeared clear. A powerful expedition was moving toward a city without imperial walls, or an army capable of meeting it on equal terms. The march toward Makkah was not movement across an empty desert. An expedition of such scale depended on water, supplies, guides, and animals. Valleys and settlements could become places of negotiation, resistance, fear, or submission. Later reports differ about encounters during the advance, but their broad picture is consistent. The approaching force created pressure far beyond Makkah itself. News traveled ahead of the column. Communities learned that an army associated with an elephant was moving north. For Quraysh, the threat was especially grave. Their standing among the Arabs was closely connected to the Kaaba and its sanctuary. They served pilgrims and benefited from the security and reputation of the sacred house. Yet prestige did not become military strength merely because danger had arrived. Makkah lay in a rugged valley. Its people understood trade, tribal alliance, and guardianship, but they could not summon a force equal to an organized expedition backed by a regional power. On one side stood soldiers and visible means. On the other stood a sanctuary and a population forced to recognize the limits of its ability. If the threat were turned away, the people would know that the decisive protection had not come from them. Seerah reports describe representatives of Quraysh meeting the approaching force, and they give a prominent place to Abd al-Muttalib, the respected grandfather of the Prophet Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon him. Accounts of the meeting vary in wording and detail, so the conversation should not be treated as though every sentence has the certainty of revelation. The lasting meaning, however, is clear. Quraysh understood that direct battle could bring destruction without protecting the sanctuary. Reports describe Abd al-Muttalib seeking the return of property taken during the advance while entrusting the house to its lord. Responsible action was taken where action was possible. But the safety of the Kaaba did not depend on pretending that Quraysh possessed power it did not have. The people withdrew from immediate danger toward the surrounding heights. Imagine the valley becoming quiet as families climbed away from their homes and looked back toward the sanctuary below. The Kaaba stood without ranks of soldiers surrounding it. No triumphant defense was prepared. Makkah waited beneath the weight of an approaching force. Human beings often recognize dependence on Allah most clearly when the usual instruments of control have fallen away. Quraysh still possessed lineage, reputation, and commercial relationships, but none could guarantee the next morning. The house associated with Ibrahim and Ismail, peace be upon them, appeared exposed before worldly ambition. The firm center of the story is Surah Al Fil. Allah asks, in meaning, whether the listener has considered how the Lord dealt with the people of the elephant. Their scheme was brought to ruin. Birds came against them in flocks, casting stones of baked clay, and they were left like eaten straw. The surah is brief, but its language transforms a local memory into a permanent moral sign. It does not invite fascination with military spectacle. It directs attention to the failure of a plan raised against what Allah had willed to protect. The expedition possessed organization and apparent strength, yet none of those means could make its purpose succeed. The Qur'an does not require imagination to fill the scene with graphic violence. Its comparison is sufficient, restrained, and devastating. For a documentary telling, this boundary is important. We affirm what the Qur'an affirms without inventing supernatural imagery, sensational suffering, or unsupported detail. We also hear the warning contained within the account. Material power is real, and people are responsible for how they use it, but it is never independent of Allah. Plans can appear complete while carrying the cause of their own failure. The people of Makkah did not protect the Kaaba through a victorious battle, and therefore they could not claim ownership of the deliverance. The sanctuary survived by a protection that exposed both the weakness of the attackers and the dependence of those who had withdrawn. After the danger passed, the valley, sanctuary, and memory remained. The event became associated with what Arabs called the Year of the Elephant, a reference point used when remembering births and other events. Quraysh's standing was strengthened because the sacred house under their care had survived an overwhelming expedition. Yet the protection of the Kaaba should not be misunderstood as approval of every practice around it. Idols still surrounded the house. Inherited customs still mixed truth with human invention. The same people who inherited the memory of extraordinary protection would later be challenged by revelation to worship Allah alone. The Lord of the house protected it before its worship was restored, and those honored for serving it would later be asked whether honor meant defending tradition or submitting to truth. Surah Quraysh, placed immediately after Surah Al Fil, reminds Quraysh of their journeys, provision, and security, then commands them to worship the Lord of this house. Security was not merely a privilege, it carried an obligation. Provision was not proof of self-sufficiency, it called for gratitude. The Year of the Elephant stood as both mercy and warning. In or around this remembered year, another event took place quietly in Makkah. Amina bint Wahb gave birth to Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon him. Out of reverence, this series will not depict him, his mother, or named members of his family. The birth does not need an invented image to carry its meaning. His father, Abdullah, had died before he was born, so the child entered the world without knowing a father's care. He belonged to Banu Hashim, an honored clan of Quraysh, yet honor of lineage did not remove the vulnerability of orphanhood. No imperial announcement marked his arrival. No court in Byzantium, Persia, or Abyssinia understood that a child born in Makkah would carry a message addressing rulers and ordinary people alike. The contrast with the marching army is striking. The expedition announced itself through visible power and failed before reaching its purpose. The birth passed quietly, while its consequences would extend across centuries. Muslims look back and see the Year of the Elephant joined to the birth of the final messenger, but the people living through that year could not yet see the full pattern. They knew that the sanctuary had been protected. They did not yet know how its worship would be purified, how tribal boundaries would be challenged by faith, or how the orphan born in their city would become a mercy to the worlds. History often appears loudest where armies move, yet its deepest transformations may begin in silence. The Year of the Elephant prepares us for the Seerah by teaching how to read power, protection, and preparation. The Kaaba was protected, but the messenger who would restore its worship was not raised in a life free from pain. Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, began as an orphan. According to a custom among families of Makkah, he would spend part of his earliest childhood in the open desert, where children could grow in a different environment and learn clear Arabic speech. Later, Seerah reports preserve accounts of those years, while the Qur'an itself would remind the Prophet of Allah's care. Did he not find you an orphan and give you shelter? That divine care did not mean the absence of grief. It meant that loss, vulnerability, and human support unfolded within a greater protection. The lesson of the elephant and the lesson of the orphan belong together without being made identical. In the first, visible force was stopped before the sacred house. In the second, a vulnerable child was guided through losses and responsibilities toward a mission no worldly power could have designed. One story warns against confidence in might. The other teaches that weakness in human eyes does not prevent Allah from preparing a person for immense responsibility. As dawn returned to Makkah, the valley may have looked much as it had before, but the memory of protection had entered Arabian history, and a new life had begun within it. In the next episode, we follow the Orphan of Makkah through the first losses, care, and experiences that shaped his early years.